Okay, I'm going to. We've got a fair few on the call, so I'm going to mute everybody out. If you have got any questions for me or the Sophos team, once we get into that, then just raise your hand, or I don't mind rude interjections either. We're all friends this afternoon. So again, thank you for joining us on Break a Hacker's Heart, and some good whiskey tasting from Once Upon a Whiskey. Hopefully you've received all of your things and are all ready. So we're going to be joined by John Hope and Lee Sumpter from Sophos, and they'll run through a presentation on how to break a hacker's heart. And we've also got Camilio from Once Upon a Whiskey for the tasting following that. So I thought I'd just start with a brief introduction to EACS. We've got a fair few people on the call who know EACS well, but we've also got some new friends joining us. So just a quick overview of EACS and our security maturity assessments that we provide for our clients. I will just start. Too many windows open. There we go. So at EACS, we're over 28 years old now, and have been selling in and around the. I'm just going to turn my head off because I'm right in the middle of the screen. That's better. So we've been in and around Cambridge. That's where we started out 25 odd years ago, selling kit and services into the science parks. And we've got a wheel of services that we put together that is specifically geared to collection of products, particularly people like Sophos and what have you. So the modern workplace, I'll just quickly whip around the wheel. Modern workplace is anything to do with the desktop, whether it be virtual, application virtualization, so things like Citrix and Intune and what have you. We've got some very deep skills there. Hybrid cloud, anything with a flashy box in a data center as well as up in the cloud. Cybersecurity, where we're here talking about that today, and that we've got a NOC and a SOC and some good old products in there with some deep skills around how to run your cybersecurity strategy. Apple services, so we take calls on our service desk for Windows and Apple. We're device agnostic to some extent. It's relatively unique in the marketplace. We do have a 24/7 managed services desk. It's all UK based, first, second, third line out of our offices in Huntingdon. And the fastest growing part of our business is the apps and data team. So they're Power Platform, so Power Automate, Power BI, and we're doing some really interesting integration projects for on-prem, using all of the other 5 parts of the wheel, really. Some really interesting integration and dashboarding projects there. Now, just to get you salivating, I've swapped all of my videos out. There's usually a man typing on this video attempting to hack something, but I thought I'd switch that out for some whiskey. So just some facts. There was a really interesting cybersecurity breach survey on gov.uk from last year, and 39% of businesses and 26% of charities were breached last year in one way or another. That's quite high. We're seeing 0-day pickup as well. So since 2018, the 0-day vulnerabilities that have been out there have increased every year since 2018. 2021 being a record year. The only other record year was 2020. So the past 2 years have been very noisy from 0-day exploits, and we're seeing a lot of our clients that are being breached. Of those that are breached, 1 in 5 lose money, data or assets, and 1 in 3 report being negatively impacted. And only half of the companies report security to the board at least quarterly, and that in and of itself, there is a bit of a detachment there that we help our clients with, particularly around the security maturity assessments, which I'll talk about. One thing that we are seeing, 63, or this is another survey, but this is based around the supply chain. So 63% of respondents say that they rely upon reputation when selecting third parties, and 87% of consumers are willing to walk away for a company if a data breach does occur. 46% of of companies suffered reputational damage from a direct breach, and that cost them money, time, etc. And 16% suffered reputational damage from a third-party breach, so downstream. So being able to assess those different elements within that chain is quite important. So we've got a security maturity assessment that we do for our clients. Technology is important, and we're talking about some technology today in Sophos, but actually having the people and the processes assessed as well for security maturity, both awareness training, processes around what to do when a breach happens, that kind of thing. And we can come in and put a score, a baseline score to your security maturity, and then help work with you to increase that score, whether that be in the technology, the people, or the process. It is a relatively quick process, so there is 3 elements of it. There's a self-service, which will circulate. That is something that you can do yourself. There's a series of questions there that will give you a start score, and then we can do the workshops, but also the substantive deep dives. So I have rattled through that quite quickly, and we will be circulating some information there afterwards. But without holding you up any more, moving on to John Hope and Lee Sumpter from Sophos, how to break a hacker's heart. Over to you guys.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. So it saves me doing a lot of the statistics around the threat landscape and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we can get straight on with it. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm between you and these little guys. So we'll try and get underway as quickly as we can. So I'm going to share my screen and do a very small bit of PowerPoint before we do the really interesting stuff. So first and foremost, welcome to Choose Your Own Hackventure. My name is John Hope. I'm a Senior Technology Evangelist at Sophos, and I am joined and ably assisted by my friend and colleague Lee Sumpter. And we want you to strap yourselves in for about the next hour or so. We are going to play the role of cyber criminals, and it's going to be your job within the audience. So pay attention, because you're going to help us conceive and execute a targeted attack against one of our would-be victims. So we're all going to play the role of cyber criminal, and we're going to go through exactly the same process that a real cyber criminal would go through. So we're going to work out who our desired victim is. We're going to do some reconnaissance on that victim, and then we are going to go through the process of creating a suitable weapon to attack them, and then deploy, and ultimately we are going to try and cash out and carry out an action on objective. And like I said, all the way through this, it will be your opportunity to steer the Hackventure and decide how we attack this would-be victim. So to paint you a little bit of a picture, we have already done the first part of the recon for you. So we have already selected our victim, and we have selected the Acme Sprocket Company, and we are going to attack the Acme Sprocket Company. The reason why we're going to pick on the Acme Sprocket Company specifically is twofold. One, we happen to know that this particular organization is quite cash rich already, and by knowing that they are cash rich, we know that they have a good ability to pay if we can hit them in the right way. Okay, so one of the things that cyber criminals will do is they will work out, well, if I'm going to attack somebody, what does a payout look like? How much can I afford to pay? And is it worth basically attacking that victim based on their ability to pay? There's no point picking on a 10-user organization, if we're going to go after multi-million dollar ransoms, because they'll just, kick their heels up and say no. So we need to find somebody who can pay, first and foremost. The other reason why we've selected the Acme Sprocket Company is we happen to know through some other reconnaissance that these guys have got some very interesting intellectual property, which we might try and steal, as part of the Hackventure. The other reason as well, incidentally, that we have selected this particular organization is we've actually found a couple of potentially weak individuals within this organization. So this is your first opportunity, by the way, to steer the Hackventure, because what we've done for you is we've lined up these 3 potential victims, and we've selected all 3 of these, one because of the positions they operate in within the organization, So they're all fairly senior and all have access to some potentially interesting bits of material. And I'll talk about that in a second. But we're also interested in these victims because they're actually giving us a lot of information already. So we've done some stalking. We've done some reconnaissance online. We've looked at things like social media and things like LinkedIn presence. And we already know a little bit about these people and probably enough to start working on an attack. So the three people we've got to choose from, and I want you to start thinking about what your choice is going to be, is we've got Steve Rogers, who is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. We're interested in him because obviously he's got access to the financial records and the financial details. We like him because he's really big on Instagram and posts lots of really interesting information on Instagram, particularly the fact that he's really interested in retro TV shows. So he's potential victim number one. Potential victim number two is David Lightman. The reason we're interested in him is he's the senior systems administrator. So by virtue of that job role, David clearly is going to have a lot of access to sensitive systems, sensitive information. We like him because he's actually very open on LinkedIn about telling us the systems that he's good at, which means they're probably the systems that he's using at work. And he's also very busy on Instagram telling us about his love of cats, which again, we might potentially look to exploit. And then our third potential victim is Angela Bennett. Now, Angela Bennett is the HR operations specialist, very busy again on social media, very much active on Facebook, telling everybody about her holiday experiences. And obviously we're interested in her because she may well have a lot of access to personally identifiable information. So those are our three victims. And Richard, if you'd be kind enough just to launch the poll for me, then this is your opportunity to select which of these three people you would like to attack. And while Richard is wrestling with teams, just as an aside, by the way, questions and comments and stuff are really welcome, but midway through this is probably not the best time. So if you have any questions or whatever, then do drop them in the chat dialogue box and we'll try and get to those at the end if that's okay.
Okay, John, looking at the responses today, it looks like David Lightman will be our victim.
David Lightman, okay, that's a good choice and quite a logical one from the cybercriminal's point of view, because obviously if you can own the systems administrator, you are effectively owning the network as a whole. So we can use the fact that David has such a high level of privilege within the organization to our advantage. So let's have a look at the intelligence that we got from research into David. And you can see there in the top right-hand corner there, we've got the skills and experience. So this is a snippet from his LinkedIn profile, and it's telling us about his extensive knowledge of working with AWS, GCP, and Azure. It's telling us about things like Terraform, CloudFormation. It's telling us about the fact that he's an MCSE. It's a little bit lower down and hidden in there. So it's telling us the kind of environment we're likely to encounter as cyber criminals. So a little bit of word of warning number one is probably try not to share too much information about your environment, because you're massively giving the cyber criminals a leg up about what your environment looks like. Interestingly, towards the center of the screen here, David seems to have a bit of a love-hate relationship going on with his cat. So he loves his cat like nothing else in the top one there, but he's also quite cross with his cat because it transpires that his cat's gone off the food that he's just bought in bulk. So that's kind of unfortunate, I guess. But the bit that's really interesting for us as would-be hackers actually is that one that's on the bottom right there. So you can see that David has just posted that he's about to board his flight to the US, and he's very excited to be flying on an A380. Now, the reason why that's interesting is obviously David is in the process of traveling, and if we send him things like travel documents, that is something that's probably going to pique his interest and probably get him to click on some links and things that he shouldn't do. So Lee is off in the background at the moment creating a targeted attack towards David, all about ways and all about booking flights. And just while he's doing that, I'm going to give you a bit of a warning. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Lee, and Lee's going to show you some of this hacking going on live. You will see the Sophos logo in the bottom side of the end user machine and the victim machine. But in order for us to obviously hack that machine, we've had to turn off most of the protection. So clearly, you shouldn't be trying this at home. So please don't try this stuff at home. This has obviously been sort of specially set up to go through the Hackventure so that we can actually see some actual cybercrime happening. So with that aside, Lee, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give control over to you.
Okay, thanks, John. Give me a second.
I'm hoping he's pretty quick at typing.
Okay, can you see my...
Yeah, we can see that. Thanks, Lee. So just to paint the audience a bit of a picture here, what we've got is on the left-hand side of the screen here, we've got David's computer. And on the right-hand side here, we've got our cybercriminal's computer. So the left-hand side is a standard Windows machine, not anything particularly fancy. The right-hand side, we're running Kali Linux here. It's a particular version of Linux, which has a lot of hacking tools inbuilt with it. So it's a particular favorite of the cybercriminal. So that gives you a bit of an idea. This is a unique perspective because, like I said, you're seeing both the victim and you're seeing the perpetrator in this particular setup. So before we actually go and start doing anything bad, Lee, can you just hop onto the endpoint and just show everyone the fact that, just to reconfirm, we have disabled all the protection, or pretty much all the protection on that machine. So we've just left on network threat protection and ransomware detection. And we might, depending on which way the Hackventure goes, we might see those protection mechanisms kicking in. But other than that, we're just, again, to emphasize, we've turned off all the rest of the protection. Okay. So Lee, did you manage to create a phishing attack?
I did, and I've sent that to David, and in David's inbox.
There we go. So you can see that message has arrived there in David's inbox. And if we have a little look at that message, it all looks pretty official, doesn't it? You know, it's come from British Airways and it says your flight has been successfully booked. Would you like a free upgrade? Now, who doesn't want a free upgrade? So what we've done here as cyber criminals is we understand David's situation and we've created a document here that's particularly pertinent and relevant to him. And we've also created a sense of urgency around it. So, you know, he's about to board the flight. We know this. He needs to do his upgrade now, otherwise he might miss out on the opportunity to sip some of that wonderful Club World champagne. So that's why we've done the things that we have, and we're hoping, and this is what cyber criminals do time and time again, we're hoping that David is going to suspend the rational part of his brain for a second and is going to make an emotional and impulsive decision to actually click on the content. So with that said, do we want to see some hacking? Do we want to see what this actually looks like? So Lee, if you can open up the attachment for me, that would be really great. So what Lee's done here, Lee's made a maliciously crafted macro that is embedded into that Word document. And, you know, because we've built up that sense of urgency, then we're hoping that David is going to enable all the active content on the machine there, and which obviously is a really bad thing to do, but, you know, a lot of users do sort of fall for it. And you can, well, actually, you can't see anything has happened there. So David's opened that document up and nothing seems to be happening. So he's just going to carry on with what he's doing, right? Because, you know, there's no alarms that have gone off. There's nothing to show on the screen here that we've got a problem. So it's kind of a bit underwhelming, really, isn't it? You came here to see some hacking and you can't actually see anything going on here at all. But if you turn your attention to the right hand side of the screen there, what you can see on the right hand side is that we've managed to successfully open a Interpreter session. So we've created a connection from the cyber criminal's machine through to David's machine. So we've got that initial level of connection established, which is obviously fantastic, but this is a very temporary and a very transient connection at the moment, because if David reboots his machine or goes offline or whatever, then we're going to lose this connection. So obviously, as cyber criminals, time is of the essence. And what we need to do is decide what we're going to do next. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to make your choice on a poll. So given that we've got a limited level of access into this machine. Oops, sorry, I've actually launched the wrong poll there. That's rather awkward, isn't it? Let's try that again. So that's the one you want. What's our first action going to be? Would you like to escalate privileges? So, you know, do we want to go from a user level up a little bit higher in the food chain? Do we want to steal credentials from this machine? So maybe harvesting things like usernames and passwords from this machine, or do we want to stage persistence? So staging persistence is basically turning our temporary connection into a bit more of a long-term foothold. So apologies for the error there on launching both polls simultaneously, but the one you need to look at is what is our first action? And if you can vote away, that would be absolutely fantastic. Cool. Okay, so it looks like most people want to stage persistence at the moment, but there's still plenty of opportunity for people to vote. And again, this is a very real cyber criminal choice. You know, do we want to come back here time and time again, or do we want to sort of cash out and get straight to the objective as quickly as possible? Well, looks like most of you have voted to go down the route of staging persistence. So we'll go with staging persistence. Now, this is a little bit of a trick question, actually, to an extent, because if we are going to stage persistence, then we do actually need to escalate privileges as well. So that's one of the first things that we're going to do. So again, if we're looking at the Linux machine there on the right-hand side, then let's first of all have a look at the information that we've got on this machine already. So we can see that we've got a Windows machine here, and we can see that we've got one session established to it. What we might choose to do is run an inbuilt command called get system. So like I said, Kali Linux is kind of designed to be a hacking tool first and foremost. So there's a lot of inbuilt commands, and get system is one of them. So this is going to try a whole load of stuff out the hacker cookbook to see if we can get system level access. So let's give that a go firstly. Let's see what happens. Operation failed. Okay, well no, it's a live session. You know, this is not pre-recorded, and stuff like this does happen sometimes. One of the reasons why this has probably occurred is thanks to user access control. But obviously, we are determined hackers, so we are going to see if we can work out a way of getting around that. And one of the best ways of getting around this actually is to run what's called the local exploit suggester. So what we could do is we could have a look at all the processes and things that are running on this machine, look at the build versions of them, and see if we can find out something that we know is potentially vulnerable. But actually running the local exploit suggester kind of does most of that for us. So again, another inbuilt tool, which is going to do exactly what it says on the tin. It's going to suggest to us applications and processes that might potentially be vulnerable, and actually suggest some things that might be useful routes to exploit this machine. So you could call us lazy hackers, you could call us efficient hackers. I don't know. It's up to you. But obviously, in either case, what this is doing is really cutting down on the time that it takes. So what's happening at the moment is our Linux machine is now looking at the victim and trying to find out things that might be potentially vulnerable. And in a second, it's going to come back with hopefully quite an extensive list of things that we might be able to exploit. There we go. It's just figuring it out now. So there's a fair amount in there, and this bit of a shout out, by the way, at this point, that obviously the more software you run, then the more attack surface you've got. So minimizing the things that are actually running on a machine is really important. Also a shout out for patching, because the more you patch, then the more chance you are having of being protected against these kind of exploit approaches. Right, the one thing we're really interested in this little lot is the bypass event viewer. So this is using an inbuilt process here to basically bypass user access control. So we're going to launch that particular exploit against our victim machine, and in the hope that we can bypass the user access control. So we're going to run that. Bit of cut and pasting going on here.
Absolutely.
Lazy hackers. So we're going to load that exploit into the session that we've got established, and we are going to run it and see what we can see next. Fantastic. Okay, so you can see we've managed to establish and open a second session onto our victim machine there, which is great. And now we can use the PS command to actually list all of the processes that are running on this machine. And what I'm trying to do here is see if we can find something that's running in the system context, because we're going to need to get a higher level of access here. So there's a few things in here that look like we might be able to use them because they're running at NT authority. So I'm specifically looking for the search indexer, so we can narrow down this search a little bit by looking for just search I, and that will show us where the search indexer is. There we go. So we can see that's process ID 624. So we can migrate into that. Sorry, I picked the wrong number there, 7544. So we can migrate into that process, and then we can basically use its system level privileges. So let's do that. Let's migrate into that system context. Migration systems. Now, if we get UID here, what we should see is that we are running at NT authority at system level. So you can see, we've basically now got complete access and complete control of this machine. So, we've already made a real significant effort and gone a significant way into controlling this machine. But again, this is still a transient connection, right? So if that user decides to shut it down, isolate the machine in some way, shape or form, then we're going to lose that connection. And unless they open that document again, then we're kind of locked out. So we need to do something which is going to give us more persistence. And the best way of stating that persistence really is to find an application that's potentially vulnerable. So Lee, can we have a little look in the startup folder of this machine and just see what basically comes up every time this machine boots?
Yeah, so I've just copied that from my enumeration script there, John. So being efficient and lazy again.
Absolutely. And that whiskey is not going to drink itself, right? So we need to get there as quickly as we can. Cool. Right. Okay. So what have we got in the startup folder? We've got putty. Now that putty is an absolutely perfect example of an application that we can actually choose to use to stage persistence. So can you actually go and find the putty folder for me and go just bring that down and download it for us, please? And I'll explain a little bit about what's going to be happening here. So we are going to basically do some code caving with putty, and we're going to insert some malicious code into it so that we can have a backdoor into this machine whenever we like. So the first thing, of course, we need to do is pull down that putty executable and get it onto our hacker's machine. There we go. We're going to download putty. Fantastic. Right, so we've got that downloaded. Now what we need to do next is open up a utility called Shelter on our Linux machine. So again, commonly available tool here, and we'll talk a bit about the name Shelter in a second. So we're going to run in the automatic mode, and we are going to point putty towards, Shelter towards our portable executable of putty. So that putty copy that we've just downloaded, that's what we want to point Shelter towards. And then what we can do is then actually have it start looking through that. So it's doing that now. It's having a little rummage through putty. And what it's doing is looking for spaces and gaps, if you like, that it can actually inject and insert malicious content. So it takes a little bit of time to actually enumerate all the code on there and work out where the gaps are. During which time I have to pad for a moment or two. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Shelter and why I like it. I'm a dad and I love dad jokes, and Shelter is a bit of a dad joke because what we're going to do here is open up a reverse shell, which is where the shell part comes in from Shelter. But also Shelter is a great place to hide out code. So what we're doing is building a shelter inside this application for our malicious code. So like I said, it's kind of a little bit of a pun really, and it is a commonly used application for this sort of thing. And again, another little word of caution as well, a bit of free advice. I'm sure none of you would do this, but I'm sure you're also aware that it's sometimes quite easy to get cracked versions of licensed software online. I don't know if you realize this, but often they come pre-code caved like this. So not only are you getting your cracked version of Photoshop, for argument's sake, but you're potentially inviting the cyber criminals into your environment by having all this stuff happening in the background. So a little word of caution about, you know, accessing free software and stuff, because there's usually a price to be paid somewhere. Cool, right. So now we've found some gaps. How do we want to insert that code? Well, we want it to run in stealth mode because we don't want it to announce to the user anything's happening. And we're going to drop in a listed payload, and we're going to drop in the reverse TCP handler from memory. And obviously what we need to do is tell the code cave version of putty where to call home to. So by setting the L host, what this is doing is actually telling the code cave machine where it needs to call back to. So that's our IP address there. It happens to be 11.11.10.201. So that's our cyber criminals machine. So we're telling that code cave version of putty to call back home to there, and we're telling it to call home on port 443. The reason we've selected port 443, of course, it's a commonly used port, it's HTTPS. So when an admin sees port 443 connections, they're not really going to investigate that in any great depth. So it's a great way of hiding out inside seemingly legitimate traffic. Another reason, of course, as well, why we've selected putty, and I forgot to mention this, is putty is one of those low-level applications that it doesn't really change very often. So if we code cave putty, then it's going to be code cave for the long term because no one's going to do an update on it. And again, it's the kind of tool you'd expect to find on a system administrator's machine, right? So it's not going to arouse any level of suspicion. Anyway, cool. So right, so now we've got a code cave version of putty. It's no good on our cyber criminals machine, so we probably need to transfer it back to David's computer and upload it back to them. So let's go send it back to them and drop it off over there for them. Incidentally, by the way, if David was already running putty and it was active in the background, we would have to shut it down first, but that would be actually pretty trivial to do. We could stop the process, copy the new version across, and then restart the process. And David would probably just assume that his version of putty's crashed for some reason. Cool. Anyway, right. So there we go. That's been transferred over. We're not going to use it now. Bit of a teaser, but we'll probably come back and use that in just a little while. So what we need to do now is migrate back down to the user context. So if you can have a look at the running processes again, Lee. What I really want here is OneDrive. Obviously, that's running in the user space. So we'll drop that down to there, and it gives us all the opportunity then to make another choice. So we're just migrating down into 7796. And if we get UID again, then what we'll do is just verify that we are back as a regular user. Absolutely fantastic. Cool. Right. So there we are. We are back at the user context, and that gives us an opportunity then to decide what we want to do next. So I apologize. I managed to launch this poll already, but if you have a little look on the right hand side of the screen there, then the next question is, what do you want to do next? So there's three choices of action that we can do here. We can perform a network recon. So what we're doing with the network recon is actually looking across the estate, looking for servers, looking for potential sources of data that might be more interesting. Or we could look for files more locally and see what's going down on our local machine. Or if anybody's feeling a little bit voyeuristic, then there is the opportunity to monitor user activity live, which is bearing in mind, of course, the cyber criminal in this scenario is only seeing the right-hand screen. Now, you're really lucky because you can see both sides, but our cyber criminal can't really see what's going on the other side. If you could take a little look at that one and see which of those routes you want to go down, that would be fab. I'm going to put my own vote in as well. So we've only got 8 responses on there. So I apologize. This is probably my bad for not launching them in the right order. But have a little look there on the right hand side there, and I can see some more responses coming in now. So people have obviously found that.
I think, is this the right one? Unusual network connections. I think this is a.
I don't know if that's been launched in the background as well, but yeah, the one you're looking for is what should we do next, and the 3 choices are network recon, look for files, and monitor user activity live. There we go. There's a few more responses. We'll give you a couple of moments to find that. So the polls section, obviously you probably already found it, is at the top of the screen. And then appears on the right hand side once you open it up. There's 20 responses in there now. I would definitely encourage you to vote because there's a bit of a tie going on at the moment, so it's definitely worth your time and effort to vote. Okay, looks like the last flurry there has sort of driven it in one distinct direction. So we'll go with that. So the main choice here is network recon, but we don't want to disappoint anybody. So let's do a very small bit of monitoring user activity. Lee, would you mind just taking a snapshot from our victim's machine?
Yeah, sure. So let's use an example. He could be going to, let's have a look. Who do you bank with, John?
I was sure my mother's maiden name as well. It's the bank that I bank with is my bank.
Okay, just for an example, we could look at using a snapshot of this particular screen, or we could even look at casting this to our machine as well. So what we have from here is an option to screen shot. There we go.
So it's saved locally. So let's open that up and just have a little peek at what cyber criminals have seen. There we go. So just to show you how easy that is, and Lee's right, we could open up things like a keylogger, so we could see when the usernames and passwords are being typed in very, very easily. We could just stream the whole thing and just watch it live. If the machine's got a webcam on it, we could spin the webcam up and not announce it. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff with monitoring user activity live, but that wasn't the winner of the poll. So the actual winner of the poll was Network Recon. So let's stop being spies for a second, and well, actually, I suppose we're spies in a different way, aren't we, really? What we're going to do now is actually have a look around the network, and let's see what other machines we can find. Again, really common cybercriminal technique here, because most of the time the endpoint is not really where the interesting stuff is at. You know, the servers that hold all the data and that sort of thing, which are much more useful, much more valuable. So if we're going to go looking around the network, we need to piggyback an application that's going to get us there. So let's get a list of the applications that are on this machine. All right, so there's a lot of applications running on this, actually. And again, another shout out for running the minimum amount of software. The things that might be potentially interesting in this little section here that are network related, you should find FileZilla in there somewhere. Bit of a retro FTP agent. There we go. And also the remote desktop connection manager as well should be kicking around in there somewhere. Now, I happen to know in advance that both of those particular applications on this machine are vulnerable to exploit, and actually vulnerable to exploit in a really trivial way to steal some credentials. So let's use the first one there. Let's use FileZilla, and we're going to use the FileZilla_client_cred command to actually basically just launch an exploit against this vulnerable version of FileZilla that's going to help us steal some passwords. So really easily, FileZilla rolled over and gave us a username and a password there for an FTP server. So that was really, really simple. And the other one that we could use as well is we can do a similar command for the remote desktop connection manager. So RDC_manager_creds is hopefully going to yield us some useful information in terms of usernames and passwords for our network connections. Obviously, the RDC manager is there to basically look after remote desktop connections. So there should be quite a lot of useful information in here. And lo and behold, there is. So we found two servers. The one I'm interested in is the Office server. And you can see there's a login name there of fileshare_admin and password of super secret. So mega easy to just take those usernames and passwords straight out of that application, which is all very well and good, but we don't really know where the Office server is. So we're going to do something pretty simple here. We're just going to drop into shell for a second, and we're going to ping that Office server just so we can reveal its IP address. And again, you know, if you look, even if you've got things like EDR and XDR style tools here, this is just a ping, right? It's not in its own right showing anything that potentially is malicious in nature. It's just background network traffic going on. So there we go. We've revealed that the Office server is located at 11.11.10.10. So that's going to be very useful for later on. What we're going to do now is we are going to use our victim's machine. So we're going to use David's machine and pivot to the LAN. What we're trying to do here is establish a proxy on that victim machine so that we can relay our commands through that victim's machine. The logic behind that is that basically, again, from an EDR, XDR point of view, all of these commands appear to have come from our victim's machine. And if there's any kind of user access control, any kind of rules in place, then it's going to look like the traffic has come from David's machine and it's going to be allowed. Whereas if it was coming from the outside world, those things would probably be blocked. So what Lee's doing in the background here is he's just putting in the auto route command, and then we're going to drop a proxy server over onto this machine as well. So we're just telling it a bit about the network environment, so it understands how to route traffic internally, and then we're gonna send the proxy over to this machine. And we're going to load that into our session.
Okay.
There we go. We're starting a proxy on our remote machine, so now we can actually use that to route commands from our victim's machine. So one of the obvious things that we could do is we could route a remote desktop request through our victim machine. So we're going to attempt to remote desktop to the Office server that we just found out about. So we're going to remote desktop to 11.11.10.10, which of course is the IP address that we discovered that Office server is located at. So there we go. We've got ourselves a remote desktop connection established. And remember, we stole those usernames and passwords. So are we going to give it a go and see if we can log in?
I'll give it a quick go. Yeah.
Oh well, here's a live demo. So I wasn't quite sure if that was going to work out or not, but you can certainly illustrate the point. You know, we've got usernames and passwords. We could very easily remote onto that machine if we wanted to do so. Cool. Okay. So what we need to do now, of course, is get ourselves back into the user context, because again, time being of the essence, then we are going to need to make a decision about which route we want to go down ultimately to cash out on this particular machine. So the two choices that you've got really in terms of actually getting some financial gain out of this, I'll present to you in just a second when we're all set. Cool. So I'll let Lee do that in the background, and you should have a poll in front of you now. This is the right poll this time. You'll be glad to know. So basically, what's your final role here of the dice as a cyber criminal? Now that we've got access to this machine in a persistent fashion, now that we know a little bit about the network environment and we've done some recon and potentially accessed one of the servers here, what do we want to do? Do we want to launch ransomware against our victim and see if we can't get them to pay out some money to clear off that ransom? Or do we alternatively want to do a network attack and see if we can't bring down some critical resources and further attack the network, basically? So again, you know how this works. This is your opportunity to vote and steer the route. Unsurprisingly, potentially ransomware is definitely topping out at the moment. It's still a massive topic, yeah. Even though you know the sort of age of ransomware has been with us for quite a long time now, you know, it is still a real serious challenge for IT administrators. And believe it or not, 37% of our organisations on average experience at least one ransomware outbreak in a year. So you know it is very relevant topic. But of course, attacking the network is also equally relevant, and looking out for potential victim machines is quite a common thing to happen. Cool, right. It looks like ransomware is the way forward on this one, Lee. Looks like everybody wants to cash out on our endeavours using a ransomware attack. So before we launch a ransomware attack, there is probably a little bit more recon that we can do. If we're going to set a ransom figure, then we probably need to work out what data we can get a hold of and what the perceived value of that data is. So can we have a look in the users directory and see what Word documents we can find?
Can indeed.
Let's have a little peek.
Okay, that's for documents.
Right. Right, what have you got here? 2022 cyber insurance certificate. Now that sounds really interesting. Is there any chance we could download that, Lee, and let's have a little look at it?
I think we can. Oops. My bad. You know me, John.
We'll get you a new keyboard with some payout if you like. I'll get it, you can have a keyboard.
Okay, so we want the 2022 cyber insurance cert.
That's it.
2022 cyber insurance.
Trying to spot the typo.
You know what might be easier? We go like this.
Cut and paste.
Don't we always? It's a shame you can't tab. But,
You just need an initial 2 on the. That's it.
There we go. Okay, so now we have that.
There we go. Cool. So now we've got our cyber insurance certificate downloaded. Why, you might be wondering, am I particularly interested in this document? Well, I'm excused the formatting because obviously we're using LibreOffice to open a Word document, so there's a bit of wonky formatting going on there. It looks a bit like a ransom note, but that's as an aside. Why I'm interested in this document is it tells me that our victim, the Whisk Rocket Company, is insured for £1 million. So I know exactly what to set the ransom at now, because if I set the ransom at £15 million, then their ability to pay probably isn't there. But I know now that there's a reasonable chance they will pay a ransom of up to £1 million because I know that they're insured for £1 million. So that was a really useful bit of reconnaissance. So what do you think, Lee? We're going to go for the 4 million or 900,000? What do you want to go for?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go all the way.
If we're going to do it, we'll do it, mightn't we? Absolutely, yeah. So cool. What we ought to do though is actually give you a bit of a demonstration about how this looks from the victim side as well. So can you open up on the victim's machine? Can you just open up the Explorer and actually show the documents from the viewer side? So just so you can see that these are real documents. By the way, do you want to just open that insurance certificate from the user's side? There we go. So you can see that was a real document, and be interesting to see if we can open that again in a second or two, actually. So it's probably worth just closing that one down, isn't it, for the time being? But if you can leave the File Explorer open, then we can see some magic happening in a second.
Indeed.
Cool. So what we are going to do is we are going to use, in just a second, we are going to use the run encrypt command. So we're going to use an inbuilt Metasploit script to start encrypting some files. But before we do that, because it's all going to happen really quickly, I want to explain to you what you're about to see. So what you need to look at, first of all, once Lee hits enter on that run encrypt command, is you need to look at the extensions of those files, because you'll see them getting changed as the encryption happens. So they will change to .owned, indicating that those are files that are now encrypted. If Lee's really quick on the mouse, we might try and open a document just to show you the fact that those documents are encrypted. Then very quickly down the bottom right hand side, you'll see InterceptX detecting the encryption, because that was one of the features we left on, ransomware protection. It's going to detect using CryptoGuard and will actually stop the process probably about the second or third file. And then what it will do is actually start restoring those files back to the original state. So what's happening is every time those writes are happening, InterceptX is, as part of CryptoGuard, is keeping a private copy back, and we're going to dust off that private copy. We're going to automatically put it back in. So the sequence will be, you'll see the file names changing, you'll see them encrypted, you'll see InterceptX kicking off, and then you'll see InterceptX putting those files back into the original state again. So with all of that said and all of it teed up, if you'd be kind enough, Lee, to go down the route of the run encrypt, and let's watch those files getting nuked.
Ready?
Go for it.
Yeah.
So we have slowed this down as well, by the way, but it is still pretty quick. So you can see that .owned has changed. If you want to try and open that document, you'll see it's now all of a sudden a bunch of meaningless garbage because it's been encrypted. The next file down any time now is going to change to a .owned as well. So you can see that that one's been encrypted. There you go. That's been encrypted too. And this is the point, hopefully, where InterceptX kicks off in the bottom right-hand side and tells us that we've got some kind of problem going on here. No. Did I miss the toast notification there?
No, that's it. I think there's a bit of lag between the desktop.
Okay, might be me. I didn't see that, but I can certainly see the file extensions changing to .owned and then going back to their original state. So obviously, there it is. It's caught up on mine. The joys of remote meeting. So there you go. You can see the ransomware has been detected. Now, Lee, again, if you'd be kind enough just to open up that to a Word document again, just to prove that it's gone back to its original state again. So bit of a showcase here for InterceptX, and particularly the CryptoGuard function. Even though we turned every other bit of protection off, we still saw the file being encrypted, and we saw InterceptX basically blocking that encryption attempt and putting the files back to the original state again. So you can see that has been detected. What probably has also happened as well is the Sophos clean aspect is now really starting to drill into this machine, and is potentially starting to tear down some of the connections. So can you go to the interpreter side and just see if we've still got a connection to this machine, or whether that's been pulled down?
Sorry, yes. We've still got the connection. Clean is right. It will tear it down, but anti-exploit is turned off, so certain elements of that process will remain.
Okay, not to worry. And there's another way we can show that off in just a second. So I haven't forgotten about the stage persistent stuff. Shall we use this as an opportunity to go to Sophos Central and start having a look at the threat case? So everyone's got to change their hats now. We're going to stop being cyber criminals for a minute. And now we're going to put ourselves on the good team. So we're going to put ourselves on the blue team, and we're going to use Sophos Central as a tool to actually do some investigation and see what we can see about that attack chain, and see what information it can glean. And we're going to use the live response service in a sec to actually bring down the connection we've got established.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So from top level, we'll work off this alert, John.
Okay, sounds good to me. So there you can see CryptoGuard detected ransomware. So let's have a look at that, because obviously any kind of ransomware ought to be triggering off alerts and you know, mentally and make us have an element of interest in actually investigating this in more detail. So what's loading up in a second, I assume? Maybe we're going to have a look at the threat case.
Yeah, so this is the threat case, but this is a historical one, because right now all of that, all the particular components of that exploit, all of the processes, all of those actions that we actually completed are being packaged up, sent to the threat journals by Sophos Clean, and they're now on their way to Central to create exactly what you see here, which is a threat case.
Thank you. Cool. So it's probably worth a little look at that. So the threat case at the top level there, it shows you really simply, you know, who was involved, what was detected, and what we did about it. But the real interesting stuff, especially if you're a bit of a nerd like me, is in that kind of crazy looking diagram down the bottom there. So do you want to take us through some of the attack chain, Lee, and just show us around that?
Yeah, sure. So it just in a simplified way, we can see the event started on this particular machine. We can see the root cause was with Outlook. So InterceptX has gone back and actually seen where all of those processes started. So it all started at Outlook. So you could almost assume that an end user has kind of clicked on a link at this point, but who are we to kind of convict the end users? Then we can see the beacon, and the beacon is where InterceptX has made the conviction on a malicious process. And on this particular one, we can see it's PowerShell.exe. So from this, we know that a threat actor is using PowerShell, and they're using a lol bin. They're using living off the land binaries to execute, which was in this particular case a payload, just a ransomware payload running through PowerShell. We can see that was detected, and then we can see that was Sophos Clean. So those processes were shut down completely. Okay, so if we look at how this started, we can see the entry point using Outlook, and then we can see Outlook opened these particular attachments. So we can see this one, it differs, and then we can see this opened Outlook Office. And then we can see that that particular attachment then opened MSHTA. And MSHTA is another lol bin, another living off the land binary that exists within Windows. And it is being used maliciously to then call out to a URL to pull down a malicious payload and also connect to our Kali Linux box. So we can see here each and every component that we need to use to start our threat investigation, our incident response, and see exactly what's happened on that machine at this particular time. Now, what we could do is kind of go through this full analysis, see what kind of files were touched, and see what was reverted, and do further levels of analysis based on threat intelligence from Sophos Labs. But to kind of expedite things, what we could look to do is use a direct path. And this gives us a simple high-level overview of the entry point. Microsoft Office was opened, that executed MSHTA, MSHTA executed CMD, CMD executed PowerShell. And if we move across to here, you can see our privilege escalation there. So you can see PowerShell triggered eventviewer.exe. So that was for the privilege escalation to the higher UA access token. Then we can see the inject thread where we migrated from the user context to the system context, where we landed in search indexer. All whilst at this point, we are completely using lol binaries. So again, migrating to search indexer, then running search indexer for what we need to do. We don't come up on the radar as using any sort of malicious executable.
No, absolutely. Yeah, but it's really important to emphasize, isn't it? Yeah, that none of this stuff is malicious content in its own right. Things like PowerShell, they're all legitimate tools. So it's very difficult as an admin to work out whether this is legitimate stuff or not. And it's only when ultimately exposes itself by using PowerShell to launch the encryption is actually where we start to detect things are going a little bit astray here.
Sure. The terminology I was looking for before is fileless ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can see the final conviction, just to point that out on here, where we launched our fileless ransomware, and the beacon, so the behavior of PowerShell, was convicted. And we can see here exactly the string that was actually used. And this is a base 64 encoded string, so obfuscated. Should PowerShell really be running with many obfuscated, if any, scripts? Probably not. So what we could do is base 64 decode this and actually get the origin of what that PowerShell script actually did. So we can see what it was set to do, where it was set to call back to, and add that to our particular threat case.
It's probably worth mentioning, I'm going to steer this slightly, that obviously use of encrypted PowerShell is potentially suspicious. So did that flag up in the XDR detections, Lee, as something that Sophos Central thought was probably worth some investigation?
In detections, that probably will have been flagged up on the MSHTA to start. Triple Distillation, we can see what happened there. We could look at more filters within here. Let's take a look, see if we flagged it as any other at this point. Bearing in mind, data is still being fed in from a threat case.
May not have arrived. That's a fair point.
Okay, so
the defense is showing there, isn't it? The MSHTA.
Yeah, we do have elements. So 28. So execution of a malicious file. Let's see what we have. Okay, so this is when MSHTA is called. So this is seen this as a detection, and it's being brought to detections for validation by IT operations and security operations. So we could pivot out and search for a SHA if that was required, if this was a malicious payload or executable. And then we can start stitching together further elements of the detections. But right now, seeing as we're in a live incident response, we can go back to our threat case. And from here, we can look at garnering further insight and evidence, because you guys selected establishing persistence. And with that in mind, being on the blue team, I want to think from my side, well, okay, we've seen a ransomware event stopped by InceptX. That's fantastic. The AV component is doing its job absolutely fine. But as John mentioned, what if the attacker has actually installed a method of persistence? That's where we have to hand over to the human-led side of threat investigation. And that's where we'll jump into now. So, John, I believe you have more questions.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to steer it intentionally, in the interest of time, and also because I really desperately want to use live response. So can we have a look and see if there are any unusual network connections? And the audience can probably figure out where I'm going with this. So can we potentially see where there might be something still established back to the cybercriminals?
Sure. So what we're going to look for then, in our case of incident response, we could see that we had a call out to an IP connection. So we've got evidence of an IP address. So I'll call this a IOC. So what we want to do is firstly go into our live discover query and interrogate the machine to ask the machine, do you have any connections still built to that particular IP address? And if it does, then it's time to worry. Okay, so what I have here is a number of queries, and I've categorized these in a list that I use for incident response. So number one is to search for open network connections. 2, see if there's any shared resources that are opened or may have been used by the threat actor to import tools or export data. 3, check user accounts to see if they've actually installed a method of persistence by adding a local admin, for example. Groups, known exploit searches, and then, as we spoke about, PowerShell with using encrypted or encoded data within their script. So in here, I'm going to elect our attacked machine, and we will run that query. And we get everything back in terms of its netstat table. So we can see here every source, destination port, every destination IP address, as well as the path, so the process that spawned that connection. So as we look down here, everything looks kind of normal. Okay, that looks a bit off standards, but that's a Sophos program, so we can see that that's part of Sophos NTP service.exe, so that's legit. But as we go a little further down, we can see we do indeed have a connection still established to 11.11.10.201, which we've taken from our threat graph as being a indicator of compromise, a dial out to that machine. We can also see that PowerShell is opening or keeping this connection open. Day to day, does PowerShell really need to hold any connections open? Probably not. So we know we've kind of got a conviction here that the attacker has got a method of persistence. So right now we're in a bad place. We know that we need to shut this connection down. We really need to shut this down quickly. So what we can do is take a look at the process ID, and we'll scribble this down. Again, part of our incident response. This is 7284. And what I'm going to do is take an immediate response. And what we have here is a incident response tool that can be used for a number of things, but essentially we land at system level on a Windows machine or root on a Linux box. This gives us obviously the highest level of privilege on those particular machines, which means we can do pretty much anything. So who am I? We are authority system. I'm going to drop into PowerShell and I'm going to take a look at my connections. So if we take a look at those, we were looking for 7284, and that was our established connection. 7284 is indeed our connection to 11.11.10.201 using PowerShell. So what we want to do now is immediately kill that process, so we tear down the command and control channel. So I'm going to start process. ID is 7284. And I'm going to tear that down. Okay, I can see on my attacking screen that my interpreter session has just been torn down. So I go back across to live response. I'll run that query again. And we can see the attacker no longer has a method of persistence. Or do they, John?
Well, do they? Absolutely. Now, because there's a little copy of Putty kicking around there, which I suspect if we relaunch, we might just see those code caved elements that we injected earlier on actually forming that connection back up on its own. So we could give that a try and you know see if the cybercriminal's in on the next reboot.
Okay.
And it demonstrates from the cybercriminal's point of view as well, incidentally, the value of persistence, because you know if it wasn't for that code cave version of Putty, we're now out of the game. Okay, we've been booted out. We've been rumbled, but we can come back in here again if what we're trying to do works successfully.
Okay, so user clicks in, and we are now directly back into this user's machine.
So we're back in, we can start the process all over again. And our poor victim thinks that their machine is clean and they've dealt with the problem and it's all gone away. And lo and behold, we've got ourselves a back door that we can start doing different things all over again, should we want to. Cool. So I hope you found that useful. I'm really conscious of the fact that we've gone ever so slightly over on time and we've not given Andy the opportunity to do a bit of a wrap up. So Andy, if you want to just sort of bring that element of the session to a close, and then as part of that, maybe we can invite any questions that you might have from the audience.
No, indeed. Thank you very much. I found that very interesting. Thank you very much, Jonathan. So we did have a question from Lawrence on chat, which was, do we have the same capabilities for Windows, Linux, and OS X?
Okay, so presumably that's from the protection and from the victim's sort of perception. You know, do we have the same capabilities to do things like incident response and detection, that kind of thing? Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the clarification, Lawrence. So essentially, yes is the answer. I think you could probably expand on that a little bit, but obviously there are some subtleties between the different platforms, but the basic underlying principles are all pretty much the same, right?
Yeah, so when you look at threat graphs, that's a Windows feature, but the live discover, live response detections are covering all platforms.
Cool, thank you, yeah.
Any other questions for the guys before we move on to some whiskey tasting? That's great. If you do have any questions that you're either madly typing or moving on, then send them through to the EACS team and we'll get them answered for you. So thanks, Jonathan and Lee. That was very interesting. Thanks very much. We do have a question. Thank you. What about, that came off my screen there. Can you see that?
I got that, yeah. So what about detections on the OT layer? Now that's a really, I don't know if you were on the same session I was doing the other day, but I did a session with the Institute of British Manufacturers, and there was a lot of conversation around operational technology. So for anybody who's not familiar with the term, because it is kind of relatively new, OT is really kind of machine tools, building controls, anything that's internet connected, but is not sort of in the realms of traditional IT. And it's an area that's growing enormously. You know, if you go to a factory these days, most things are connected. You know, at home, for example, I can see at least one light bulb and one smoke alarm that are internet connected, and that's without even trying. So there's loads of operational technology stuff that's out there, and it's increasingly used by the cyber criminals for two things. One is a bit of a leg into the network, particularly because, if I can be candid, often security is maybe not as good as it could be on these kind of devices. And those devices themselves can be used to also target other victims. So often operational technology is used for things like denial of service attacks. Being able to look into operational technology is sometimes a challenge, because you can't put a traditional agent on the machine. You know, a smoke alarm, a printer, a machine press is not going to be able to run Sophos endpoint protection, for example. Now, if this particular hypothetical customer happens to be a Sophos firewall customer, then obviously everything that goes across the internet backwards and forwards will go through the firewall, and the intel and telemetry that comes off that network traffic can be fed into XDR. So we can, a lot of the searches that you do are not just telemetry from the endpoint, but are potentially network traffic related as well. So it kind of alleviates some of the blind spot associated with operational technology. A bit of a shout out for cybersecurity as a system as well, because then you've got multiple sources of data coming from different places, and it's great to be able to cross-reference it using the XDR platform. Anything you want to add to that, Lee, or have I covered it pretty well?
Yeah, I think segmentation is key with all things that they're on VLAN, and then their routing point is IPS, application control, firewall, TLS decryption, etc. But as some of the guys' comments I've just seen, find some Windows XP, so you would completely isolate those from everything anywhere anyway, and some customizations can be done, but I guess customizations are always, they could be open for misconfiguration, and is it always a blanket custom policy? Yeah, isolation, segmentation, I would say.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think at this point I'll thank you guys very much. Hope you stay around, and we're going to introduce Camilio. Welcome to the call. Camilio is a founder of Once Upon a Whiskey, who's kindly provided the samples that you've got today. He's got some really deep experience, and has got some degrees from schools that I'd never heard of, like the New York Bartending School and the Wine and Spirits Education. Now I know whiskey and alcohol shaped my education, but in a slightly different way, Camilio, I think. So we're very pleased to be joined by him. He's going to take us through the whiskey tasting, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And well, hello everybody. Nice to meet you, and well, nice to see you, kind of, at least the ones that I can see in my screen. And well, thank you so much to Richie as well for organizing everything. So it's been it's been a pleasure as always. So yes, I do have some like alcohol and whiskey education. Basically, well, the bartending school in New York, that was only for fun. It was a very short like diploma or course. But yeah, it was a very good one. The Wine and Spirits Educations, the headquarters are in London. It's basically like the most famous entity that educates about wine, spirits, and yeah, basically everything about alcohol production process, maturation, etc. But I also have an MBA at Glasgow University, and this is where I live just now. Actually, before I came to Scotland, well, by the way, I live in Glasgow in Scotland, but as you can tell based on my accent or my name, well, I don't look very Scottish or very Glaswegian. So, well, sorry to disappoint you. My nationality, it's Colombian. I'm originally from Colombia down in South America, but well, the reason why I'm doing this is because I do have some years of experience working for the whiskey industry. I used to be brand manager for Glenfiddich whiskey in Colombia. The headquarters for the Latin American region of Glenfiddich, they're based in Bogota, or they used to be, I think they changed now. But from there, we were managing the operations from Mexico down to Argentina, basically. So I came to Scotland several times. I visited a few distilleries. And then in 2015, I came here again. I did the Masters in Business at Glasgow University. And then I just decided to set up my own whiskey business, which is this one here. So it's called Once Upon a Whiskey. That's the name of my brand, of my company. What we do on a regular basis, it's whiskey tourism. So we take people like you to distilleries, bars and restaurants across Scotland. But the virtual tastings during the last 2 years or so, like suddenly they become like really popular. And well, it's been a really good way to continue passing on the passion of whiskey. So well, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it. And the tasting set that you guys have tonight, it has been delivered by the Glasgow Distillery Company. So, well, as you can imagine, they are also based in Glasgow. So we have this partnership. They put the whiskey and I put the whiskey education. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and let's see how it goes. So if you have questions or comments, please feel free to participate. You can speak out loud if you want, or if you prefer just to leave a comment in the chat box, please also, well, feel free to do it. By the way, we send you like as a special gift a miniature bottle of Macar gin. Macar gin, it's also one of the products of the Glasgow Distillery Company. Well, the tasting tonight is going to be around whiskey. So, well, the gin, you can keep it for later, or you can drink it, I don't know, like now or during the tasting, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to give you some quick details of the gin. So, well, basically, Macar gin means, well, gin and whiskey cocktail. I don't know about that. I would suggest just to drink the gin with the tonic water. It will be a really good way to do it. With iron brew can be as well, as Mike is suggesting. So yeah, well, the gin is just like as a special gift for the tasting, but the tasting itself, it will be around the whiskey. However, Macar gin, it's also coming from the Glasgow Distillery Company. Okay, so it's one of the products that they produce. And Macar means poet. We wanted to include this gin because I don't know if you guys are aware, probably the ones who are who live in Scotland or well, probably the ones who live in England probably as well. But Macar gin means poet, and just a few days ago it was Burns night. It was like the Robbie Burns celebration. So that's why during this week we have been including the Macar gin, which means poet in all the Scottish Gaelic. It was inspired in Robert Burns. Okay, so let's see. There are some comments here. So yeah, people are about doing cocktails. Okay, so well, Pete, I will double check this with the distillery, and I will make sure you receive the tasting set. Sorry that you didn't receive it on time, but I'll make sure you receive it well later on. Okay, so let's start. So I'm going to share my screen, and well, please let me know if well, I assume it should be fine anyway. It should be here. Okay. Oh, I think. Oh yes, it's here. Okay. Well, I assume you can see my screen just now. Let me know if not, but I guess it should be fine. So this is the Once Upon a Whiskey, the logo here of my business. Remember, it's all about whiskey tourism, and the wolf, it's a symbol of unity of society, you know, like a wolf pack. So let's pretend that tonight we are some sort of a wolf pack and you guys are following me through this weird and wonderful world of whiskey. And the Glasgow Distillery Company, which is the one that distilled all of these products that we're going to be tasting tonight. Just some curious or quick facts about the distillery. It's a very small distillery, nothing too fancy, nothing too industrial, as you can tell, a very small house. In 2020, they have been awarded as being the Scottish Whisky Distillery of the Year for 2020. So that was definitely quite an accomplishment for such a young distillery. It was founded in 2014, so for obvious reasons, the whiskies that you're going to try tonight, they won't be older than that. So in average, I would say they are around maybe 5 or 5.5 years old, but definitely no more than that. Okay, that's the location of the distillery, located in the south of Scotland, in the lowland region, right in the city of Glasgow. Scotland is divided in 5 whiskey production regions. So we have got the lowlands in the south. Generally speaking, whiskies from the lowlands, they tend to be lighter and easier to drink in comparison to other whiskies from other regions. Usually Scottish people, they call them the breakfast whiskies because they are so light and so delicate that you can actually mix them with some eggs or cereal at breakfast. And well, here in the north of Scotland, we have got the Highlands and the Speyside. Whiskies from these 2 regions, they tend to be richer, more flavorful, more powerful. This happens because the majority of the distilleries up there, they will use a wide variety of barrels from different countries. It can be Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, even Australia, or even tequila barrels from Mexico as well. It's the case of Eldorado, where they like to use a wide variety of casks. There's also Dalmore up here, well known for using a wide variety of sherry casks, and well, the well-known Glendronach, which is also, it's famous for being a sherry bomb, meaning it has a lot of influence of the sherry. Speyside, I want to make an emphasis here. It's the world capital of whiskey production. The majority of the distilleries in the country are located there. Basically, more than half of the total number of distilleries in Scotland, they are located only in Speyside. So it's considered to be the world capital of whiskey production. And I assume you can recognize some of these big names like Macallan, Glenfiddich, Glenfarclas, Glenlivet, for example, really well-known and international brands. And well, if we go to the west coast, which is down here, we have got the other 2 regions. So Islay, it's one of them. Probably you recognize some of these names like Bowmore, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Lafroig. Usually whiskies from Islay, they tend to be very, very smoky and very medicinal in flavor profile, you know, like TCP, iodine, hospitals, dentists, this kind of aromas or flavors you will get there. And Campbelltown, which is the last whiskey production region, this peninsula here in the west, only 3 distilleries left. However, many years ago, they used to be the world capital of whiskey production with more than 30 distilleries. But sadly, after or during the prohibition in the US, in the States, during the 1920s, many of the distilleries in Campbelltown, they had to close their doors. So today, only 3 distilleries left: Glen Scotia, Springbank, and Glengyle. So, well, coming back here to the lowland region, so remember the Glasgow Distillery is just right there. This slide here is just to give you a quick introduction of all of the products that they do. So Macar Gin on the right hand side, remember you have the one with the blue label, the original dry gin, Macar Gin, which it means poet in all the Scottish Gaelic. And we have got the G52 botanical vodka as well, Bandit Rum, 1770 single malt whiskey, which is the whiskey we're going to be tasting tonight, and Malt Riot. By the way, if you guys are wondering why the name of this whiskey, it's 1770, it's because the original Glasgow Distillery Company, it was founded in 1770 in the city of Glasgow. So it's like a link between the old traditions of whiskey distillation and the new techniques of whiskey distillations. And the Malt Riot, which is a blended malt. And by the way, that's going to be the first whiskey of the night. But well, as I said before, just a quick introduction about the gin. So it was the first gin to be distilled in Glasgow for many years, at least 100 years. The idea, it was to produce a juniper-led kind of gin. So whenever you taste it, you're supposed to feel this kind of powerful influence of the juniper. And well, remember the word poet, it means ancient Scots, and it's a London dry style of gin. The main botanicals are juniper, angelica root, licorice, coriander seed, lemon peel, rosemary, black peppercorns, and cassia bark. In the palate, once again, the juniper, citrusness and a little bit of spiciness, and the finish is angelica and rosemary. So whenever you drink it, please enjoy it and mix it with the tonic water. And if you can drink it cold with ice, with abundant ice, that will be like the way to go. Okay, so well, the first whiskey of the night is going to be the Malt Riot. So please, guys, pour yourself a dram of the Malt Riot, and let's start with the tasting. This whiskey here, it's a blended malt Scotch whiskey, meaning that it's a combination of different whiskies from different single malt whiskies from different distilleries across Scotland. It's also the lower in terms of alcohol percentage. It's 40% ABV. So it's going to be the lower from the tasting set, and it's also the lower based on, like, according to the Scotch Whisky Association, that will be like the lowest alcohol percentage in any kind of whiskey. Okay, so, and well, before you start with the drinking session, just let me give you some guidelines for a proper whiskey appreciation. First of all, the glass. It's called the Glencairn whiskey glass. It has been designed by professional whiskey drinkers, so it's wide in the bottom, so you can appreciate whiskey's color, body, and oiliness, and it's narrow in the top, so your nose will be able to catch all the aromas easier and faster. That's basically the idea of the design of the glass. But don't worry if you don't have this particular glass. Oh, by the way, of course, I remember that we sent you the Copitas Glencairn, which it comes with a long tail. So it's basically the same. It's slightly different design with a longer like tail. But yeah, it works like very good. So in case you don't have one of these glasses, well, don't worry, it's not extremely important, but obviously if you really want to appreciate the very best of your whiskey, well, consider to have maybe one or two of these glasses at home for future whiskies. Okay, and the first step, the color of your whiskey. So please raise your glass and take a look at the color of the whiskey. Move it around just to see what's going on there, and try to identify like where it can be located in the map. Would you say it goes towards the left, you know, like bourbon, meaning bourbon cask maturation, or would you say it goes towards the right hand side, meaning European cask maturation? So definitely, well, I assume you noticed already. Well, actually, let me see if there are any comments or questions in the chat. Okay, so on the bourbon with ice, no Scotch. Well, let me see some of the comments here. We do like the column to try bourbon with ice, Scotch view, water can help the flavors. Yeah, well, and Mike and for the rest of the guys, I'm gonna explain about the water just in a few seconds. Anyway, so about the color, well, I assume you noticed already this whiskey, it will be towards the left-hand side, meaning that the whiskey has been matured in bourbon cask. So probably next to pale straw, pale gold, it can be a good position for this particular whiskey, meaning bourbon cask. The second step, it's the visual texture. So please go ahead and swirl your whiskey around the glass and take a look at the legs or tiers falling down. If you see that they fall pretty fast, well, definitely it's more like a light-bodied, easy whiskey to drink. If you see that they fall pretty slow, well, it will be more like a rich, oily, and full-bodied style of whiskey. So go ahead, swirl your whiskey there around the glass, take a look at the legs or tiers, and well, if there is any thoughts, any ideas or questions as well, please let me know. Once again, I think you noticed already, I think it's very easy with this one. It will be probably, once again, towards the left-hand side. So, you know, like a light body and style of whiskey. The legs or the tiers, they fall down relatively fast. The third step, it's the nosing part. Generally speaking, our nose, it's directly connected with our memory, and whenever we smell something, we will get, we might be able to remember previous experiences from the past. Some people say like, hey, this whiskey reminds me of Christmas, or hey, this whiskey reminds me of a barbecue, for example, when they are smelling smoky whiskeys. So put your glass 1 inch or so away from your nose and inhale gently. Go ahead and breathe through your nose, open a little bit, open your mouth a little bit, and let the air circulate. So open your mouth, breathe through your nose, let the air circulate around your throat and your nose, and definitely you will get something more specific. And the tasting part, it's divided in 2 steps. So this time, put the palm of your hand on top of the glass, give it a swirl, then release the palm of your hand, and this time give it a sharper sniff. Go ahead and inhale sharper, and definitely you will get something more specific this time. It can be floral, fruity, cereal, winey, woody, sulfury, fainty, or peaty. Usually, sulfury, fainty, or peaty are mostly associated with smoky whiskies. Winey and woody are mostly associated with whiskies that have been matured in wine barrels, and floral, fruity, and cereal are mostly associated with whiskies that have been matured in bourbon cask. So this whiskey, as you, well, if we remember one of the first steps in the color, it's a bourbon cask, so definitely you will get here lots of floral notes, fruity, and cereal notes as well. Maybe some of the woodiness, oakiness. Usually when you get the woody oaky flavor, you can translate this into vanilla, toffee, or caramel, for example. They usually come from the American oak as well. And okay, so yeah, let's continue here. And step number 4, it's the whiskey tasting, of course. So usually our taste buds are not as skillful as our nose. Our nose can catch around 300,000 different aromas. Our mouth, our taste buds, only 5 different flavors. And these flavors are sweet, sour, umami, salty, and bitter. And if you follow the lines of the graphic here, you will see that each of these flavors, they are guiding us to specific regions in the tongue. So all the sweetness, it's at the tip of the tongue, sour and umami on the sides of your tongue, and salty and bitter, it will be at the very end of your tongue. So whenever you drink your whiskey, try to swallow it very, very slowly, move it around your mouth, very gentle, and as we usually say, Slanjiva, I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it. So please go ahead and drink your whiskey, Slanjiva. I hope you like it. By the way, Slanjiva or Slange means good health in Scottish Gaelic. So yeah, if you want to make a toast, you usually say Slanjiva. So please, guys, go ahead, enjoy your whiskey, and well, let me know your thoughts, opinions, questions, comments, anything at all. Please let me know. Okay, and step number 5, it's the finish and aftertaste. Usually, always whenever you are drinking your whiskey, well, consider adding consider or think about the aftertaste. Is it short and disappear quite fast, or would you say it's very long and it lasts in your mouth, in your tongue for a while after you swallow it? So I want to show you another infographic, which is this one here. It's called the Whiskey Flavor Map. And the Whiskey Flavor Map, it's divided in 4 regions of flavor. So we have got smoky up there, rich on the right-hand side, delicate on the lower side of the map, and light on the left-hand side of the map. So the idea is that you can localize your whiskey in one of the regions of the map. So for example, let's check the upper side of the map where the smoky whiskies are located. So whiskies like Lagavulin or Talisker, for example, very, very rich and very smoky at the same time, meaning that the aftertaste is going to be very, very long. Some people would say they are very difficult to drink and difficult to digest, difficult to understand. On the other side of the map, on the left-hand side, we have got whiskies like Ardbeg, Lafroig, or Caolila, for example. Even though these whiskies are quite smoky, they are supposed to be a little bit easier to drink, lighter in flavor profile in comparison to whiskies like Lagavulin or Talisker, for example. So believe it or not, a whiskey like Lafroig, which is very, very smoky, the essence of the spirit, the body of the spirit, it's not very powerful, it's not very rich. It kind of, the aftertaste leaves you soon after you drink your whiskey. And well, in the lower side of the map, we have got the delicate kind of spectrum of the map. So it can be either delicate and light with short aftertaste, and delicate and rich with a long aftertaste. So based on your own experience, any thoughts where this whiskey can be located? Would you say it's light and delicate, like easy to drink, or it's like rich, powerful, flavorful? Any thoughts? Any idea? Let me see if there's anything in the chat box here. Okay, so Gore is saying light and easy to drink. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Lawrence is saying easy as well. Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with that. It's going to be more towards the light and delicate side of the map. It's actually very, very light. I will put this whiskey next to Linwood, for example. Linwood, Glenkinchie, Dinston. It can be a very, very good position. Super light, super delicate whiskey. Okay, so let's come back here, and this is step number 6, time, water, and repeat. Well, the idea is that you can always put just a few drops of water. The water will reduce the alcoholic percentage, and it will enhance some other hidden flavors that otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell directly from the whiskey. Sometimes it's actually like 2 different whiskeys, 2 different experiences whenever you put some water. In this particular case with the Malt Riot, since it has a lower ABV, remember 40%, I don't think it's necessary to put a lot of water. Literally just 3 or maybe 4 drops of water, it's enough to make some changes. Now, if you have a whiskey with a very high percentage of alcohol, you know, like 50 or even 60 in some cases, well, definitely consider to add more than just a few drops. Maybe a splash of water will be okay. All right, let's continue then. So let's see the tasting notes here, but just before, let me check. Okay, so I prefer my ice. I will ice, not ice, not. Skip one piece. All right. So yeah, let's continue. And well, these are the tasting notes. So in the nose, it's fresh. Leading to sweet vanilla slices and hints of floral notes as well. In the palate, it's toffee apples, some spices, and caramelized pineapples, which I definitely agree with this kind of pineapple kind of flavor. And the finish, it's very, very light, very smooth, with some ripples of milk, chocolate, fruit, and nut. Those are the main tasting notes. Feel free to agree or disagree. In my opinion, I would say that I definitely agree with the caramelized pineapple and the freshness and the floral notes of the whiskey. And definitely the aftertaste, it's very short. It's like one of those easy, nice whiskeys that you can drink well at any time of the day. Remember the breakfast whiskeys? Well, this might be a good one for a good breakfast. But well, obviously, please drink responsibly your whiskey at any time, any day. Okay, and well, it's time to go for the second whiskey of the night, which is Glasgow 1770, the original fresh and fruity. So please, guys, pour yourself a dram of this whiskey. In the meantime, let me see. Nice drink. You could certainly get a floor in the nose. Responsible is not spill any. Okay, yeah, Mike, absolutely, I agree. So please don't spill your whiskey. That's also a responsible way to do it. Very light, get a bit of toffee apple. Yes, it's very sweet, and it's very light, you know, like easy to drink. It goes down. Yeah, that's why it's basically the first whiskey of the night, the one that we are starting here. Oh well, the first whiskey of the tasting. Okay, so please pour yourself a dram of the 1770, the original fresh and fruity. From now on, we can go a little bit faster, so there's no reason to wait for me anymore. Feel free to enjoy your whiskey. Remember the step-by-step of whiskey appreciation. Take a look of the color, give it a smell, give it a try. Think about the aftertaste and mix it with a little bit of water if you like. Bear in mind that this whiskey here, it's higher in alcohol, it's higher ABV. It has 46%. So what's going on in your whiskey or in the whiskey industry, whenever you produce a whiskey with higher ABV, you will be able to create more complexity, more character, and more flavor. So definitely more alcohol, it means like a richer and more complex style of whiskey. So let's see what happens, and well, feel free to compare, you know, like this whiskey and the previous one, and this whiskey with the next ones. But yeah, as I said before, feel free to enjoy it. And in the meantime, I will continue telling you the story. So what's the difference between a single malt whiskey and a blended Scotch? I assume some of you already know this, but well, just in case, let me remind you. I would like to explain the difference because the first whiskey of the night, it was a blended whiskey, and this one here, it's a single malt. So basically, a single malt whiskey, if you take a look of these squares in the lower side of the screen. So single malt whiskey, it's a whiskey that has been distilled using 100% malted barley. The only grain is going to be malted barley. It has to be distilled at only one distillery. It's distilled in copper pot stills. I'm going to show you a picture of pot stills later on. And the production process, it's usually in very small batches. So they don't produce massive quantities, or they don't produce industrial quantities of alcohol or anything like that. So it's usually in very small batches, meaning that the whiskey, for obvious reasons, it's going to be more expensive. It's one of the reasons why single malt whiskeys are more expensive than blended whiskeys, for example. A single grain, which is the other category, some people would say like the forgotten category. This one here, it's not very commercial. It's not very easy just to go to the shop or the supermarket and just ask the guy like, hey, I would like to try a single grain whiskey. It's not very commercial. It's not widely available. However, it's the whiskey that it's mostly produced in Scotland. So basically, yeah, I'm gonna tell you the details here. It's a mix of different grains with malted barley, corn, or rye. It can be any kind of mix that you want. It has to be distilled again at only one distillery. It has to be distilled in column stills and not the pot still. And the production process, it happens in continuous distillation, meaning that they will be able to produce vast quantities of alcohol in a very short period of time. So it's like massive quantities of alcohol in a very short period of time. And this is basically like the main difference between the copper pot still and the column still. Pot still, it's for small quantities. Column stills, it's for like massive, like a lot, millions of liters, gallons of alcohol every single year. And the blended whiskey, we have two main categories. So one of them, it's blended malt, like the Malt Riot, meaning that it's a mix of different single malt whiskies from different distilleries across Scotland. And the second most famous category, which I would say, well, it's actually the most famous category all around the world, it's the blended Scotch whiskey. A blended Scotch whiskey, it's like Johnny Walker, for example. Johnny Walker, Chivas Regal, White and Mackay, Famous Grouse, J&B, Ballantine's, well, etc., etc. So a blended Scotch whiskey, it will be a combination of single malts and single grains. That's usually what they do. Okay, and that's why I was telling you before that single grain whiskies are mostly for industrial purposes. Single grain whiskey, it's mostly used by the blenders rather than going to the supermarket and see a bottle of single grain. There are some exceptions, and nowadays it's a category that is starting to grow, and eventually we will see more often single grain whiskies like in the shelves of whiskey shops or supermarkets. But right now it's not very commercial, I would say. Okay, so yeah, let's continue. So yeah, well, very briefly, how whiskey is made, ingredients. So you only need malted barley, water, and yeast, which are the same three ingredients that you need for beer production. So people say that whiskey, it's what beer wants to be when it grows up, because first of all, you need to create this alcoholic beer of around 10% of alcohol, then you distill it into the pot stills, you create a colorless and flavorless spirit, like vodka, if you like, and then if you put this clear alcohol into the wood containers, then you will be able to call it whiskey. In Scotland, the most popular barrels that they are using in the maturation process are these ones that you can see here, but particularly this one, the hogshead, it's 250 liters of capacity. It's American oak that previously held American whiskey. The sherry butt from Spain that previously held sherry wine from Spain. Of course, it will be around 500 liters of capacity. And this one here, the port pipe from Portugal, it's also a famous one. It will be around 700 liters of capacity. Some other famous barrels, it will be the quarter cask. The quarter cask makes reference to it's the quarter of the size of the hogshead. So hogshead, 250 liters, the quarter cask, it will be around 50 to 75 liters of capacity. And well, the French barrique as well, it's starting to be like more and more popular. By the way, one of the whiskeys of the tasting set, it has been matured in the French barrique, so I'm gonna give you details about that later on. And well, something very interesting that happens during the maturation process, it's the angel's share. The angel's share is the effect of evaporation that happens year by year in the cask. Every single year in Scotland, distilleries, they will lose around 2% of the whiskey through evaporation. It goes up to heaven, and they are only the angels, the ones who are able to enjoy that whiskey that disappear. That's why they call it the angel's share. And there's another thing that you need to know, which is the devil's cut. The devil's cut is the percentage of whiskey that is absorbed by the wood in a lifetime of that particular whiskey in that particular cask. It will be around 5% in total, and it happens only once. So 5% for the devil through absorption and 2% for the angels through evaporation. So you guys can choose if you want to be the devil or an angel based on how much you enjoy your whiskey. And well, this one here, it's like a graphic representation of the angel share. So let's pretend, well, actually you can see there, this is a new fill barrel. This is what happens after 10 years old. This is after 15 years old, and this is after 23 years old. So it's one of the reasons why a 50-year-old whiskey, for example, is going to be very, very expensive, because after 50 years of maturation, there's pretty much nothing left in the cask. And please forget about the idea that only the older the whiskey, the better it is. That's not true. Something that you can get for granted from an older whiskey, it's that it's going to be more expensive, but not necessarily better or more tasty than a younger one. And it has happened to me several times. I buy fancy, expensive old whiskey, you know, like 21, 25 years old, and then it's a total disappointment. I have tried some other, like even 3-year-old, 5-year-old whiskey, and they are fantastic. They are really, really good. You don't need to break the bank to buy one of these bottles. So yeah, please forget about. It's one of the biggest myths in the whiskey industry that the older the whiskey, the better it is. That's definitely not true anymore. Okay, and well, let me check if there are any comments here. Okay, the devil has the best music. Okay, well, yeah, that's a good point. Just to choose to choose hell instead of heaven. Okay, we're recording the session early next week. Okay, perfect. And is it possible to buy somewhere the material that you are showing? I'd like to reinforce the knowledge. Ivan or Ivan, sorry, well, I don't know, I guess like one of the two. Yeah, Ivan. Yes, I sell the infographics that you are seeing in the presentation, like the tasting steps, the flavor map, and the map of Scotland, plus a few others. I sell them online. I sell them on my Etsy shop. Bear with me, I will share the link right after I finish the presentation for you and for everyone else. Okay, so Mike is saying I have blended socks on. They are Johnny Walker ones. Maybe use the cotton from numerous different fields. Yes, I guess, Mike. That's a very good point. You know, actually, the very interesting socks, the ones you have. I don't have any kind of whiskey related socks. Sounds interesting. Okay, so like this one, very good. Okay, previous whiskey has gone go. Okay, good. Well, I can see that you guys are enjoying the fresh and fruity. So let me continue with the others here. And well, according to their tasting notes, they say in the nose it's dry, dark fruits with tropical undernotes, followed by hints of biscuit, oak, and freshly cut grass. In the palate, it's sweet butterscotch, creme brulee. Some dates, raisins, sweet almond, honey, and creamy shortbread. And the finish, it's it's long. It's a long finish. I wouldn't say it's the longest finish ever, but definitely there's a little bit more aftertaste in comparison to the previous one. Some spread orange marmalade, nutmeg, complex woodiness, and slight spice. So yeah, this whiskey, according to the flavor map of Whiskey Appreciation, you can see the 1770, it's already there, it's just right here. So it's still in the light and delicate side of the map, but definitely richer than the Malt Riot, which it was like very, very light, very delicate around here. Okay, and also let me show you some of the quick details here. Some of the quick details about the maturation, the production process. So, well, first of all, fresh and fruity. It has been matured in 2 different types of barrel. First fill ex-bourbon cask, and then it was finished in virgin oak. What virgin oak means, brand new barrel that previously held nothing at all. So they just got it from the trees and they put the whiskey right there, like immediately. And so yeah, what happens with the virgin oak, it's able to develop more flavor, more complexity, and more character in a shorter period of time. So that's why the majority of the newer distilleries in Scotland, they like to use virgin oak because it's like a good way to cheat on time, if you like. So the virgin oak, since it's a new one, it will be able to add more complexity, more color, more flavor in a shorter period of time. That's usually what happens. However, you have to be very careful, because if you leave your whiskey for many, many years in the virgin oak, then at the end of, let's say, I don't know, 10, 12, 15, 20 years, it can cause the opposite effect, and the flavor will be too strong and too oaky and too woody. That's why the distilleries, they like to use it for a short period of times. In this case, it was just a few months. It's double distilled, it's natural color, it's non-chill filter, and it's 46% ABV. Natural color and chill filtration. Well, actually, I'm gonna give you details about this later on. Just bear with me. Okay, let's continue. And well, it's time to go for the second whiskey of the night, which is 1770 Triple Distilled, Smooth and Vibrant. So please, guys, pour yourself a dram of the Triple Distilled, Smooth and Vibrant. As its name suggests, this whiskey has been distilled 3 times. So, by the way, feel free to enjoy it. Remember, you don't have to wait for me anymore. Just go ahead, pour yourself a dram. Remember the step-by-step of whiskey appreciation. Take a look at the color, give it a smell, give it a try, and think about the aftertaste if you like, and we'll mix it with a little bit of water if you like. So yeah, triple distill. So what happens with the triple distillation? Usually, the more times you distill an alcohol, the less flavor you can find. It's a good way to kill some of the heaviest flavors, some of the heavier characteristics, and to try to produce a softer, lighter, and easier alcohol to drink. That's why in the vodka industry, for example, it's very popular. You know, I have seen vodkas triple distilled, 5 times distilled, and some other crazy numbers like 45 times distilled or things like that. So in the vodka industry, well, it's a good idea to exterminate the flavor, basically, because the idea is that you can mix it with whatever you want. You know, it's like perfect for cocktails, for example. And also you can mix it with like ginger ale or orange juice or cranberry juice, whatever. So in the vodka industry, that's valid, it's acceptable. In the whiskey industry, not so much. Well, I would say 3 distillations, it's enough. Like more than 3 distillations, definitely not, but 3, it's still acceptable. So what happens with the triple distillation, you are supposed to kill the flavor to make a softer and smoother spirit. So this whiskey, it's supposed to be smoother, lighter, delicate, easier to drink in comparison to the previous one. However, there is something very interesting about this one, and it's the barrels, the maturation process. So let's compare. So this one here, smooth and complex, it has been matured exclusively in virgin oak barrels. Remember the previous one, it was ex-bourbon and then finished only for the last few months in the virgin oak. This one here, it has been matured for all the time, for all these years. Well, it's not too old, remember, it will be around maybe 4 or 5 years of maturation, exclusively in the virgin oak barrels. Meaning that yes, it's gonna the brand new barrel, it's able to add more flavor and more complexity in a shorter period of time. But this whiskey, it's triple distilled, so it's supposed to be lighter and smoother. On one hand, they are removing flavor, thanks to the triple distillation, but on the other hand, they are adding flavor thanks to the maturation exclusively in the virgin oak barrels. So I like to call this whiskey like a contradiction of flavors. So, and I definitely agree with this description of smooth and complex. On one hand, it's smooth because of the triple distillation, so probably at the first stage of contact with your tongue and your taste buds, you will feel that it's smoother, but the aftertaste, it's a bit longer, it's a bit sharper than the previous whiskey, for example. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that one, let me know. And well, once again, this whiskey, it's natural color, it's non-chill filter, and it's 46% ABV. So the natural color and the chill filtration, these practices are more common for bigger companies, you know, like mostly for the blenders, like Johnny Walker, Chivas Regal, Buchanan's, J&B, White & Mackay. They usually modify the color of the whiskey because since they produce massive quantities of alcohol and millions of bottles per batch, well, they like to standardize the color, and they want to make all of these bottles that go in everywhere in the world to look exactly the same. So the idea is that the bottle of Johnny Walker that you buy in India, it's exactly the same bottle of Johnny Walker that you can buy in Canada. So that's basically the reason why they modify the color, you know, because usually, you know, like from barrel to barrel, when you produce small batches, the color can change, you know, like from batch to batch, it will change. But for smaller distilleries like the Glasgow Distillery Company, well, that's definitely not a problem. And it's actually a positive attribute to the whiskey, that every single batch, it will be slightly different. And the chill filtration, or in this case, the non-chill filtration, they are avoiding to reduce the temperature of the whiskey down to 0 Celsius degrees, and filter the alcohol just through a normal filter in order to remove impurities. Well, at least that's why the blenders say that they are removing impurities. However, some other hardcore whiskey enthusiasts, they will completely disagree with that statement, and they would say that if you chill filter the whiskey, you are actually removing important characteristics of flavor and mouthfeel. So that's why, yeah, it's a very controversial thing. Some people don't really care too much, but some others are like crazy about it. And well, remember, these two practices are most common for bigger producers like the blenders, Johnny Walker, etc. And 46% ABV, which in my opinion is like the right balance between not too much alcohol, but also not too much water. The Malt Riot, for example, it was diluted with water down to 40%. In this case, 46, meaning that is less water and more whiskey. It's supposed to be more flavorful, more powerful, and like a more natural style of whiskey, if you can call it like that. Okay, well, let me see, there are comments here. Sharper on the nose. Okay, so very smooth, definitely get the tea. Smooth builds over time, sharper on the nose. Okay, well, I assume, Andrew, you are talking about this one here. Yeah, it can be a little bit sharper than the others. And well, since we are talking about distillation, let me show you the pot stills at the distillery. So each of these pot stills, they have been named after an important woman, I would say. So this Mairi and Tara, they have been named after the daughters of the co-founders of the distillery, and Margaret and Frances, they have been named after two of the most important Glaswegian designers from the beginning of the 20th century. Glasgow, it's a very exciting city for music, arts, and architecture. So, well, the distillery, since it's a distillery based in the city in Glasgow, well, they wanted to get some inspiration from the artistical scene in the city, and that's why they decided to choose the names of Margaret and Frances, making reference to these very famous Scottish or Glaswegian designers from the beginning of the 20th century. Also, they have hosted at the distillery quite a few artistical events as well. They invited the Scottish Opera to play their music right in front of the pot stills, and they also invited some other artists in general, just to create some art right in front of the stills. And well, so what's going on with the distillation? How the pot still affects the flavor of your whiskey? If you are trying a whiskey that has been distilled in a very tall and thin pot still, like the one that is on the left hand side, you will be able to create a much more delicate spirit. You know, you will get some floral notes, fruity aromas. It's the case of Glenmorangie, for example, very light, delicate, fruity whiskey. On the other hand, on the right hand side, we can see this pot still here, which is shorter and fatter. What happens when you distill alcohol in a pot still like this one? You will create a much more richer, flavorful, and powerful spirit. So it's the case of a Springbank in Campbelltown, for example. It's like one of the main differences or how the pot still will affect the flavor of your whiskey if you distill the alcohol in one or the other. In the case of the Glasgow Distillery Company, I would say the pot stills are, they will be bigger, they will be like large and big. So the idea is to create a delicate, light, and easy whiskey to drink. You know, like a typical lowland style of whiskey, like a typical breakfast kind of whiskey. That's the idea. Okay, and well, according to the flavor map of whiskey appreciation, so once again, this whiskey is going down here towards the delicate side of the map. But well, remember, it's a little bit, well, actually, let me see if there are any comments. No. So definitely it will be a little bit sharper and richer than the 1770 original fresh and fruity. So I will put this one next to Tullibardine or even Frederick. It can be a good position. So somewhere around here, maybe in the rich side of the map, but very close to the light. So it's not the richest whiskey that you will ever try or anything like that. It's not like Macallan, it's not like Dalmore or Edradour, definitely very far from those whiskeys, but a little bit more complex than the previous one. All right, let's continue. And well, according to their tasting notes, they say that this whiskey, it's, well, in the nose, sweet vanilla, white chocolate, leading to fresh summer fruits, aromatic apple, pear, and peaches. The palate, it's smooth and vibrant vanilla, double cream, some orchard fruit like berries, delicate floral notes, and almond nuttiness. And the finish, it's long, or at least longer than the previous one, some rich honey, anise, black pepper, and hints of warming woody spice. This woody oakiness, it's coming from the virgin oak barrels. Remember, like the brand new barrels that they are able to add more flavor and more complexity in a shorter period of time. Okay, and it's time to go for the third whiskey, or sorry, for the fourth whiskey of the night, which is the Glasgow 1770 Peated, Rich and Smoky. So please, guys, pour yourself a dram of the Peated, Rich and Smoky, and let's see what happens here. First of all, take a look of the color. Go ahead and rise your glass. Take a look of the color of your whiskey. And well, I assume you notice already this very beautiful, dark, kind of reddish brown color coming from the sherry cask. So this whiskey has been matured in sherry cask. Now go ahead and give it a smell. Go ahead and sniff your whiskey. Remember, open your mouth a little bit, let the air circulate around your throat and your nose. And I assume you noticed already that this whiskey is a smoky one. Well, also the name is telling you peated, rich and smoky, so you will get this very smoky characteristic. And well, let's see if you like it or maybe not so much. I would say this one, it's interesting. And well, let me show you. So the quick details. This whiskey, it's well, first of all, rich and smoky. It has been matured in a combination of ex-sherry cask, and then it was finished in the virgin oak. It's double distilled, natural color, non-chill filter, and 46% ABV. Also, I want to show you something here. So basically, here in the infographic, so if we check the color, remember, usually, well, the left-hand side, it's mostly associated with bourbon cask maturation, and the right-hand side, it's mostly associated with like European barrels, European casks. This one, it has been matured in sherry cask, as I showed you before, and the color, it will be somewhere around here. You know, it's like tawny, mahogany, burnt umber, even brown sherry. Why not? It can be somewhere around this area. Very, very dark and very, very beautiful color. But how come this whiskey, being so young, it was able to absorb all this color from the cask? And well, remember also, as I show you here, it's natural color. So meaning that all of this color that you can see, it's coming directly from the cask without any kind of modification or artificial caramel or anything like that. So how come this whiskey, if it's so young, remember 4 or maybe 5 years old, it was able to absorb all this color? Well, basically because the barrels that they use, they were in really, really good conditions, and they have been only used by the sherry producers in Spain. So the sherry producers, they use it once for sherry production, then they ship it to Scotland, and immediately these guys from the Glasgow distillery, they use this cask for the very first time in Scotland. You will see some other whiskies that even though they say sherry cask, the color, it's not too dark. So how come this is happening? And well, basically because the sherry cask that they use, it has been used quite a few times. So the more times you use the cask, the less powerful the flavor and the color will be in that particular whiskey. But in this case, you can see it's very powerful color, so it has a lot of the influence of the sherry cask. Okay, and here let me show you, where is it, this one. So this whiskey, it's a very interesting combinations of flavor, but well, before that, let me show you some pictures. The smokiness or the peatiness coming from this whiskey, well, it's coming right from the peat, from this extra ingredient that some distilleries will use during the production process. Peat, it's an organic material that grows like naturally in the fields, in the land. Think about oil or petroleum, but in a solid way. So distilleries, they source this ingredient from the lands, from the field. They will burn it into some kind of ovens like this one. They will burn all this peat, and this smokiness created by the burning peat, it will be absorbed by the grain at the very beginning of the production process. It's absorbed, and then when you produce whiskey with that particular smoky grain, then you will be able to produce a smoky whiskey. By the way, this picture, it's not from the Glasgow Distillery Company, it's from a different distillery, but well, I just wanted to make my point here. So they source the peat from the land, they burn it, and the barley, it will absorb all of this kind of smoky aromas, and then when you produce the whiskey, yeah, definitely it's going to be a smoky one. So what are the yeah, there's something else about the peat. So how peat affects flavor. Usually there are two kinds of smokiness in Scotland, I would say, or two kinds of peat, if you like. I assume there are more, but at least in the whiskey industry, there are well, the Isla peat, it's quite famous, you know, like the peat that you source from this island, from this teeny island in the west coast of Scotland, which is the case of Ardbeg, like Bullin, Lafroy, Caolila, Bulmore, etc. So these whiskies, they tend to be very, very medicinal, and as you can see here in this triangle, so peaty, medicinal, TCP, iodine, carbolic, hospitals, lean, tar, diesel, oil, and seaweed. So all of these aromas, which I know what you guys are thinking, like, what? Iodine, carbolic, tar? Like, how come is this possible in a whiskey? But yeah, so usually whiskeys from Islay, whiskeys from this particular region, they tend to be like that, very, very medicinal in flavor profile. And this happens because the peat from Islay, it's basically like that. So what happens when you use peat from mainland Scotland, like the lowlands or the highlands or Speyside, the peat, it's different. You don't get these very medicinal flavors. You will get some like different characteristics, like smoky, for example. So bonfires, burn logs, fire ash. So the essence or the flavor profile of the peat, it's very different to the one that you will get from Islay. So this whiskey, it's definitely more towards this section, you know, like bonfires, burn logs, fire ash, etc. And it's, I was saying, it's a very good combination of flavor because it's not only about the peaty and the smokiness, the smoky characteristic. You will get, or you will find, a little bit of the winey notes, you know, like sherry, for example, Armagnac, Madeira, port, Fino, Oloroso, sherry particularly. Remember, the whiskey has been matured in sherry cask, so definitely you will get something like this. Maybe a little bit of dark chocolate, it can be a good one. And also fruity, but in this particular area where you can get the dried fruits. So yeah, think about sultanas and raisins, for example, and definitely you will get like this memory of eating the sultanas or the raisins. So all of these characteristics are coming from the sherry cask, basically. So it's a very nice combination of flavor. There's a little bit of fruitiness, there's a little bit of winey notes, and also the smokiness, peaty flavor from the peat. Okay, so yeah, this is basically what I'm saying here, the different styles of peat depending on the region. And according to the flavor profile of whiskey appreciation, so where do you think, well, actually, let me see if there is something here. Okay, well, some of the comments, sorry, just trying to see if there are any questions. Okay, smoky but not overly smoky. Yeah, go ahead, I think. Well, it's nice smoky but not overly smoky. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. It's not like Lafroig or Ardbeg or Lagavulin. It's not that level of smokiness. Okay, there is nice smoky some pretty whiskey. I have had it. Smoky but not as smoky. Yeah, absolutely not as smoky as Lafroig. Yeah, that's true. So wake me up whiskey, I think. Okay, and Lafroig like drinking from an ashtray. Okay, so Brian is asking what the ppm is. It's the peatiness. So this one, it's a good question from Brian. So Brian is asking what's the level of ppm. Ppm means phenol particles per million. So it's basically how many particles of peat or phenols you can find in 1 million particles of whiskey, basically. A heavily peated whiskey like Lafroig, Ardbeg or Lagavulin, they will be above 40 ppm. Yeah, it's like 40, 50, in some cases, even 60 ppm. This one here, it's between 20 and 40 ppm. So this is considered to be like a medium level of peatiness, between 20 and 40. I would say more towards the 20 rather than the 40. So probably around like 25, 20 something ppm you will get here. And below 20, you know, like 15, 10, 12, it's just like a hint of peatiness whenever you try a whisk like this one. It's the case of Oban, for example. It's the case of Springbank as well, at least the 10-year-old Springbank from Campbelltown, and well, quite a few others. So yeah, to answer your question, Brian, it will be around 25 ppm or something like that. Okay, and so whiskey drinkers contributing to global warming then. Okay, yes, Noel, that's a very good point here. And until some level, yes, that's true. Obviously, it's not good to burn things because the levels of this CO2, they are throwing this to the atmosphere. That's very true. However, for single malt whiskey production, the production that they do at the distilleries and the quantity of peat that they use, it's very, very small. Obviously, yes, I agree with you, like, and somehow they are contaminating as well. But if you compare this with a car, with trucks, or even airplanes, well, it will be a teeny tiny portion of that. And they have also made studies on Isla, and they were trying to find out how many what was like the levels of peat and how long it was going to last, the peat that you can find on Isla. And they discovered that they have enough peat for 2,000 years of production. So as you can imagine, based on these numbers, you know, like it's like 2,000 years of peat in this teeny tiny island in the west coast of Scotland. You know, it's like the impact, it's not like incredibly high as any other like industry or contaminant. But yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely not the best. Okay, and well, Richard is asking, what is the difference between bourbon and whiskey? So for something, okay, then is the method of distilling. So yeah, well, Richard, the main difference between Scotch whiskey and bourbon, it's the grain that they use. Bourbon production, it's mostly corn. Corn, it will be like the main grain, at least 51% of corn in the blend, and a single malt whiskey, it's 100% malted barley. That's basically, and in a very short way, like the most important difference between American whiskey and Scotch, it's the grain. Bourbon, it's corn, which is supposed to be sweeter. It has like a sweeter flavor, like a sweeter note. And Scotch whiskey, it's mostly from malted barley. Okay, thanks. I'll be dead by yeah, exactly. So we all we all be dead by 2,000 years in the future. Okay, so yeah, let's continue here. And yeah, okay, so according to the flavor map of whiskey appreciation, so this one, it will go towards the smoky side of the map. Of course, we all know it's a smoky one. So what's the location of the whiskey? Like, would you say it's light and delicate, meaning short aftertaste, or would you say it's rich and smoky, meaning like a longer aftertaste? So, well, let me see if there are any comments here. Well, not so many right now. Well, this whiskey, it will be towards the rich and smoky side of the map. And actually, well, the name itself is telling you it's rich and smoky. So it will be probably somewhere next to Bowmore or even Highland Park 25. It can be a good location, somewhere in this area. Definitely not like a Woolin or Talisker, nothing like that. Somewhere in this area, it can be a very, very good position. So like medium way smoky, and definitely in the rich side of the map. And well, so let's continue here. Yes, and according to the tasting notes, in the nose, it's a smoky and rich toffee, notes of vanilla, raisins, and black peppercorn spice. In the palate, it's tobacco leaf, rich dark toffee, cocoa, sweet soft peat, and herbaceous at the same time. And the finish, it's long, it's smooth, it's notes of salted caramel, licorice, and lingering spices. So as you can read here, they are describing this whiskey as, on one hand, well, like, yeah, smoky, definitely, and on the other hand, it's a combination of sweetness, like the toffee, for example, or the salted caramel. If you mix this whiskey with salted caramel, that's definitely a very, very good combination. So think about barbecue sauce, for example, which is a little bit smoky, a little bit sweet at the same time. So that's basically the memory that comes to my mind whenever I try a whiskey like this one. So yeah, like sweet and smoky at the same time. Okay, and yeah, well, let's continue. Let's go for the last whiskey of the tasting set, which is the mystery drum. This is supposed to be a mystery drum, a mystery whiskey. Well, however, you can read the label already. It's a very special one anyway. It's not available all the time, like always at the distillery. Like, it's not part of the core range of the like product portfolio. Basically, the core range, it's all of the whiskeys that we have had until now. This one here, it was a very special cask released that they only released. Well, they released this a few months ago, and right now it's only available for the virtual tastings. So yeah, as you can read in the label, it says cognac. So the whiskey has been matured in a combination of American oak barrels that previously held American whiskey. Actually, it was on the hogshead. Hogshead 250 liters of capacity, and then it was finished for the last months of maturation in the French barrique that previously held cognac. Yeah, like the cognac drink from the French producers. Also, there's a third ingredient once again, and it's the peat, it's the smokiness. So this whiskey, once again, it's a combination of a little bit of smokiness, all of the sweetness like vanilla, toffee, and caramel coming from the hogshead, and then all of these fruity notes coming from the French cognac. Also, keep in mind that the ABV, the percentage of alcohol of this whiskey, it's much more higher than all of the whiskeys that we have had tonight. So remember, the Malt Riot, the first one, it was 40%. Then all of the 1770s, it was 46%. And this one here, it's 50. So what happens when you have more alcohol in your whiskey? Well, you are able to develop more flavor, more characteristics, and longer aftertaste in that particular whiskey. So I would say it's more for a niche, you know, it's like a very specialized product for whiskey enthusiasts and whiskey lovers. A whiskey enthusiast, a whiskey geek, they absolutely love something like this, you know, it's like very flavorful, very rich, very powerful. So they absolutely love that. I assume that probably some of you would think that maybe it's too strong, or maybe it's too much alcohol, and maybe it's not like the most enjoyable experience. But well, just to let you know, it's a different style of whiskey. It has this quirky maturation in the hogshead and then in the French barrique, which, remember, the French barriques are not very common in Scotland for whiskey maturation. And the level of alcohol, which is higher. Okay, and well, you guys feel free to continue enjoying your whiskey. Try to think there what's going on. Remember the step-by-step of whiskey appreciation. Take a look of the color, give it a smell, give it a try. Think about the aftertaste and mix it with a little bit of water if you like, and well, let me know your thoughts. Actually, let me check if there's something here. Okay, so more to the right, nice, very slightly peated, sweet, excellent. Yeah, well, I assume you're talking about, let's see, based on the time. So, oh yeah, so I assume you're talking about this one, the cognac cask. Okay, Andrew is saying this is really lovely, sweet and lovely on the nose. Okay, and Richard, many businesses have been affected by the pandemic. What about the drinks industry? Has production been impacted? Do you think longer term events such as this will become more important to small distilleries such as the Glasgow Distillery? Okay, well, Richard, so yeah, many businesses have been impacted by the distillery, and in the drinks industry, well, you know, like definitely the online sales for the drinks industry, they increase, like in some cases even massively. The physical purchases in like whiskey shops or supermarkets, well, that definitely went down, like even to zero or something like that. But the online part of the business, it was actually very good. However, for tourism, you know, like distilleries, for example, and all this kind of, touristic attractions, well, you guys know what happened. It was completely dead. And myself, as a whiskey company, as a whiskey tour company, well, I was like highly affected. I had to stop from 100 kilometers to zero in one day. You know, it was like right away. I had like nothing at all, zero customers. And that's why I told you at the beginning that suddenly the virtual tastings is starting to be like really, really popular. So it was a very good idea that I managed to accommodate the business and to transform the business from the physical tours to the virtual tours and the virtual tasting. So it was actually a good thing. Everything that it was online, it went up. But everything that was physical around the whiskey industry and the drinks industry and the tourism and whiskey tours, well, definitely it went down. Okay, so production. Well, in terms of the production, no, they never stopped. Like production, it was still like the same levels and they were still producing. Remember, the whiskey industry, what you produce today, it will be drink in the future. So, you know, like 5, 10 years, 20 years. So, yes. And that's basically what happened with the Glasgow Distillery Company. In the particular case of the Glasgow Distillery, they don't have a visitor center, so it's actually a very good way for them to promote their products and their businesses and their business and the distillery through the virtual tastings like this one, for example. Okay, and Brian is saying not so peaty and sweeter. Great, excellent. So yeah, well, I can see that you guys are enjoying this whiskey. Probably, well, if there's anyone here who didn't like this whiskey at all, well, please feel free to share your comments. Trust me, I won't feel offended or anything like that. Okay, and I was saying that I was going to tell you the story of the 3 most important factors that helped the whiskey industry to kick off during the 17 and the 1800s. So this picture here on the left-hand side, it represents the development of the blended Scotch whiskey. Back in the 1700s, it was all about single malts, but believe it or not, it was really, really bad. It was very inconsistent, very difficult to drink, and very sharp, and very, even in some cases, even dangerous to drink. Many people died, and many people went blind because of these irresponsible production methods. So when they discovered that by blending the whiskey, they were able to achieve better quality, more consistency, and a relatively lighter and easier whiskey to drink, well, the discovery was a massive success, and they started to commercialize whiskeys like Johnnie Walker, J&B, Buchanan's, Chivas Regal, all over the UK. Okay, it was like, for example, London, it was like one of the most important markets back in those days. Late 1700s, the beginning of the 1800s, for example, and throughout the 1800s. So yeah, the blended whiskey, it was one of the most important factors. This picture right in the middle, this one, it represents the collapse of the cognac industry in France. So ironically, in 1864, there was a plague. There was like an insect that exterminated 80% of the vineyards in France. So the distilleries of brandy or cognac, they couldn't get the main ingredient, the grapes, to produce more brandy or more cognac. So what was the second brown available spirit in the market? Well, of course, was whiskey, and many of these cognac drinkers, they immediately jumped to Scotch whiskey consumption, and they started to drink like crazy. In France, for example, well, it's one of the most important markets for Scotch whiskey exports, and also today in France, they will consume more Scotch whiskey in 1 month than the total amount of cognac that they will drink in 1 entire year. So as you can imagine, these French people, they really, really like their whiskey. And the third most important factor, this one here on the right-hand side, it represents the development of the rail network in the UK. So distilleries from the Highlands, for example, they managed to transport their whiskies to the main cities in the south of Scotland, like Glasgow or Edinburgh, in the central belt, and then from Glasgow and Edinburgh to the rest of the world. So it helped a lot the rail network in the UK, and then it also helped a lot the development of the routes of commerce worldwide. They started to ship whiskey to North America, South America, the Caribbean as well, also India, Japan, Singapore, Australia, and well, France, of course, France, and well, all over Europe. That was also a big market. Okay, so yeah, those are the 3 most important factors: the development of the blended whiskey, the collapse of the cognac industry in France in 1864, and the development of the rail network in the UK during the 18 and the 1900s. Okay, and well, according to the flavor map of whiskey appreciation, so this whiskey here, I assume you noticed already, it's quite rich, very powerful, very, very flavorful. It also has more alcohol, which it makes sense to this complexity. So definitely in the very, very rich side of the map. And it is there's a hint of smokiness as well. So probably I would put it somewhere next to Talisker 25, or even somewhere here next to Cragganmore. Around this area, it can be a very good location for the mystery drum, for the cognac cask finish. And well, let me see if there is. I think I closed the. I closed the chat box. Where is the chat box? Here. Okay, well, I think I'm really sorry. I need to drop. Okay, well, no worries. And yeah. Okay, well, just 2 seconds. I'm just about to finish here. So let me show you the tasting notes. Mystery Drum Cognac Peated Cask, 50% ABV. In the nose, it's sweet smoke and rich tobacco. In the palate, it's maple, cured bacon, and toffee. And the finish, it's long and spicy. If you add some water, you will be able to reveal some fruitier notes, dried apricots, blood orange, and rich vanilla. Those are the main characteristics of this whiskey. And well, guys, this is almost the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your time and for your support. The Glasgow Distillery Company want to say thank you, of course, and they want to offer you 10% discount for any of their products. So if you go to glasgowdistillery.com, and if you use the code VIRTUALT for virtual tasting at the checkout, you will receive the discount. Any of the products, it's available. You can buy whiskey, you can buy gin, vodka, rum, like whatever you prefer. And actually, in the flyer that we sent you, there are 2 QR codes. One of the QR codes, it will take you straight to the Glasgow Distillery company discount. It will take you straight to the discount. And the other QR code, it will take you to my Google profile. So if you guys consider that this event, it deserves a positive review on my Google account, I would really, really appreciate if you can take 30 seconds of your time to write a positive review. It will help me a lot to reach more whiskey enthusiasts and whiskey lovers like you guys. So if you can do that for me, that would be absolutely fantastic. And well, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much. I do have some social media as well, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc., under the name of Once Upon a Whiskey. Okay, and this is the end of the presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. This one here. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I don't know if there's any like final questions or comments or anything that you would like to say. Oh, there's a question in the chat box. Do we know why the Japanese are so interested in Scottish whiskey? Well, they also produce their own Scotch. You know, like a Scotch whiskey, it's a global phenomenon. And the Japanese whiskey industry, it's also growing and growing and growing, and they're starting to produce a lot. The Japanese, obviously, they love Scotch whiskey, and they also love the whiskey that they produce in Japan. So yeah, well, not only the Japanese are interested in Scotch whiskey, like many other countries, you know, like Americans, for example, they absolutely love Scotch whiskey, and well, even Colombians, as you can see in my case. Okay, so yeah, well, I think, well, I can see many people saying thank you, and well, of course, guys. So first of all, you are very welcome, and thanks to you as well for the support. I don't know if there's any. Yeah.
Sorry, just to interject, just to say, Camilo, on behalf of eacs and Sophos and everybody on the call, thank you for what I personally found a really informative and interesting tasting session. I know what my favourite is. I don't know what everybody else's favourite is, but maybe next time we can do a poll and get that in place, and then you can know.
Cognac one, Risk. Cognac. That was very.
No, I preferred the second one, but there you go. Maybe it's personal taste, is it? But no, exceptionally, really interesting. So thank you, Camilo. If anybody is interested in getting Camilo booked for another event, I will forward his contact details as part of the follow-up to this event. So please do support his company, and as I'm sure you've seen, it's really interesting. He gives a really full, informative presentation on how to taste whiskey properly, which I didn't realise there was so much to it.
Okay, well, Richard, thank you so much for the kind comments, and yeah, I will. You know, if you ever need me, you know where to find me. And also, yes, I forgot to say I was going to share my.
I was just about to remind you, Camilo, you need to share your link for the maps behind you that are on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a second, I'm trying to find it. Should be here. This one. Okay, yeah, I got it. This one here. So yeah, got it. That's my link. I just sent the link over the chat. So I sell my posters on Etsy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Etsy. It's like a online marketplace. I have a shop there with other like infographics and posters and things. So if you guys are interested, well, please just let me know. Free shipping to UK orders. 10% discount if you buy 2, and 15% discount if you buy 3.
Sophos also do free shipping on all of their licenses.
all of the what?
All of their licenses, their software licenses, they're delivered in an email.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yes.
Yeah.
No, but thank you. Yeah, thank you. As to reinforce, thank you to everybody for coming up, and thank you for Lee and John, who I think has had to disappear because he's had a family commitment. But Lee, really fascinating insight into a hacker's mindset.
No worries at all. Thanks for having us. It's been a really good afternoon, stroke evening. So yeah, hope everyone enjoyed.
And just to let you know that the recording of the session will be available next week, and we'll circulate it to everybody. But in the meantime, we hope you have a fantastic evening. And if you want to know any other details about Once Upon a Whiskey, then please get in touch with either myself or Camilio, and we will forward you the details. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Okay, bye-bye, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. Enjoy your whiskey. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.